Jesus' words about divorce are the most conservative. They're the hardest ruling in regard to that in the first century rabbinic tradition. So the Hillel school, which was the more liberal of the schools of first century rabbinic rulings, gave a number of reasons why it was lawful for a man to have a divorce, to divorce his wife. The Shammai school was more conservative and would only allow divorces in cases of adultery and sometimes mitigating circumstances that made it very, very difficult to maintain the marriage. But Jesus is in this tradition, which is modified by Matthew and Luke in a more liberal direction. But in Mark, Jesus is consistent. There are no exceptions, no possibility of divorce. Now, the tone of this, then, is on the one hand, these are hard words. On the other hand, Jesus' spirit in this is a spirit of celebration of the orders of creation that God established, of making them male and female, and of a man and woman being joined together and being one flesh. So Jesus' spirit in relation to this, while tough, is also celebrative. And so the way in which these words then, of this ruling about divorce, can be told is compassionate and joyful. Now, the extension of the prohibition, which happens in Jesus' interpretation of this to his disciples, ruling out divorce and remarriage as adultery, is a distinctive Markan tradition. It is a very restrictive prohibition of divorce that addresses what is in many instances the motive behind divorce, namely to marry another. So that possibility is also named in this tradition as a violation against the law. The story of the children is another part of this section in which Jesus addresses the dynamics of families and of the relationships between men and women, children, so on. In this story, people, and presumably mothers, were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them. And so the disciples rebuked them. Now the translation here, spoke in the NRSV, spoke sternly, does not adequately communicate what they were doing. They were keeping the children away from Jesus and were rebuking them for trying to get children to Jesus. When Jesus saw it, he was angry. Indignant doesn't quite make it in terms of the degree of hostility that toward the disciples that is implied in the Greek word. And so the tone of Jesus' words is indicated here. Let the little children come to me. Don't stop them. So the formula here, this is a frequent structure in Jesus' instructions to his disciples when they have done something with which he disagrees, is the disciples rebuke someone for something they think they shouldn't do in relation to Jesus. Jesus speaks imperatives, that is, gives commands to his disciples about what they are to do or not to do. Then is an explanation of his command that is introduced with the Greek word gar, for is the way that it is usually translated, and then a pronouncement introduced by the formula, truly I tell you. In this instance, the commands are, let the little children come to me. Don't stop them. The explanation is, for it is to such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. And The pronouncement is, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child will never enter it. Now, the translation in the NRSV, as a little child, does not mean, and there is no implication, that you have to have entered the kingdom of God when you were a child. It's a metaphor, and probably a better translation here is like, so that there is not this ambiguity that you have to enter the kingdom of God as a child. So it may be better to translate this as whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a little child, to make clear that it's a simile. The warmth of this ending is then that Jesus takes the children in his arms and lays his hands on them and blesses them. It's a word of love, of warmth, of intimacy that he establishes with children, and is the model then for children's moments and for parents loving and holding their children. This story has had a very positive impact on the treatment of children over the centuries.